Welcome to What's the Point? I'm Bill Ellis. Each week I talk with people about the moments that shape them, the choices that change them, and what those stories might spark in you. So with that said, let's get into today's conversation. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What's the Point? I'm your host, Bill Ellis. And this is where we look beneath the surface of success, identity, and purpose and explore what really shapes a life over time. Today's conversation is about pressure, performance, and what happens when the strategies we learn early on for safety and belonging become the architecture of an entire life. My guest is Omar Ritter. Omar's a U.S. Army veteran, a graduate of West Point, and someone who went on to spend 2 decades in senior roles on Wall Street and in corporate leadership. His career has been shaped by institutions that value discipline, precision, and endurance. Alongside that outward success, Omar has spoken openly about living with PTSD, depression, and the long-term impact of neurological injury, and about how those experiences intersected with a life built around responsibility and performance. He's also the author of West Point to Wall Street, My Journey to Mental Wellness, a book that reflects on what it costs to live braced for long periods of time, and what it takes to rethink success once functioning well is no longer enough. This conversation isn't about retracing Omar's resume. It's about how lives get shaped, often early and quietly, and what it takes to recognize when those patterns no longer serve us. Omar, I am really glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Really glad to be here with you to really touch base and talk about this topic.
Well, there's a lot to discuss and a lot of implication of all of it. So let's just get started. Before your career, before that achievement, and all of us, most of us absorb a sense of what keeps us safe or valued. So in your case, looking back, Omar, what do you think you learned early on about what it takes to belong and to be secure?
What I learned about it, Bill, is that a sense of belonging doesn't really have anything to do with your ethnicity or your race or anything like that. For me, my sense of belonging really came from interacting, whether with kids, different personalities, etc., from being in an environment that really folks valued you for who you are. And let me expound on that a bit. I grew up in a military family,
Mhm.
and so from far back as I can remember, I was in Germany on a military base. So there were kids of all kinds of different ethnic groups, backgrounds, due to the folks that the military lets in. And so from a young age, I really did not base who I was hanging out with on color. I based it on, did we have the same shared interest, et cetera. So I think from a very young age, I was very open to different types of people.
That's very interesting because what that suggests to me is that in a unique situation, which is in a foreign country on a military base, a somewhat limited and somewhat closed community, we focus on what's familiar to us and what we have in common, as
Right.
opposed to looking more at the differences. Does that make sense to you?
That makes a lot of sense. And the thing that made us all different in this foreign country is we're all part of the United States military in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And so we had that shared thing in our community that was greater than anything else that could possibly divide us.
So, in that environment, as a young fella, how did responsibility and service show up in your life before it became a formal role later in your life?
So responsibility and service showed up in a lot of different ways. So, for example, being in a military family, my dad would often leave home for weeks at a time. And when that parent is not around, especially that male parent, for boys, we'd still have to make sure that we did what we needed to do in order for the house, for things to keep moving with my dad being out. And oh, by the way, Bill, what I didn't tell you is at this time my parents were divorced, so it was just me and my brothers living with my father. And so when he left for those weeks at a time, my older brother was 13, 14. And so we'd be at home, like really just getting by, the three of us without that father figure around while he was gone and just making sure we go to school and keep our grades, keep the house clean, feed ourselves, things like that. So from early on, I had that responsibility to do what needed to be done.
It's very interesting. So those early lessons that you got along with your brothers, um, how did they shape what later felt familiar, or I'm going to say what felt right to you?
They shaped what felt right to me from the aspect of everybody is responsible for the decisions that they make. So if I make a bad decision, I can't go back and say I made a decision because Bill made me do it, right? And so even as a 8, 9, 10-year old, I knew that I was supposed to go to bed at a certain time. I knew that I had to get my schoolwork done. I knew that I had to ensure that my younger brother also went to school, has an elder brother at the time, and playing that parental role. And so it really drilled into me that I'm responsible for the decisions that I make, and I'm responsible for my own success. But I should also help those that need me and continue to guide them, right? So it gave me that self of that feeling of leadership at an early age.
That's a powerful situation to be in and learn leadership and to learn
Mhm.
responsibility. And all of that started to create Omar as Omar growing up, the person. Um, when did those early instincts start to look like strengths in the worlds that you entered? And by that, I mean moving into University of West Point and then beyond that.
Yeah, I think they appeared as strengths by just having the resilience to go into a place like West Point, coming from a public school system. And oh, by the way, Bill, I went to 5 different high schools. If you can imagine. And my last high school was in the state of Louisiana. And so by the time I was a senior, I was already taking calculus, trigonometry, etc. And in a system like Louisiana back in the day, it was like ranked 45th through 50th in terms of high schools. So I used to actually do my high school's classes on something like Zoom before there was anything like Zoom. And it was a pre-recorded teacher sessions for all my classes. And so whether I was learning this stuff or not, I couldn't really tell. But that discipline of doing things myself helped me to matriculate to West Point, where you're going to school with folks that went to very prestigious high schools where their parents had a good amount of money to get them SAT, ACT tutoring, etc. But I didn't let that hold me back from at least trying to excel among those
Yeah.
folks.
Well, again, just furthering the story of you being responsible for yourself in so many ways, which is not typical for most kids growing up. Let me just take a quick sidestep here because I need to point out we've got a few things in common. Louisiana is my home.
Okay.
So as soon as you said you went to high school there, I got a smile on my face because I had an idea where you might be going. I was very fortunate to go to a private high school, but I'm also a military brat, so I understand the moving
Right.
around. All of my moving was finished prior to high school, but yeah, I get it. That transient uh, lifestyle can have quite an impact on a kid. Uh,
Oh yeah.
did that help you, or did that acclimate you for further in life?
You know, looking back as a kid, I would say that it hurt me in some ways and strengthened me in other ways.
Mhm.
So when I talk about hurting me, so when I was in Colorado, I was an all conference running back, this great athlete, and schools are reaching out to include West Point to be on their football team at the college level. And then once I moved to Louisiana, I was no longer a star. I was just one of the dudes on a team, uh, full of exceptional athletes. And so I went from, being the man to just one of the guys.
Mhm.
And it was my job just to do my role. And so it really humbled me in terms of how athletic I really thought I was. But I was fortunate in the fact that the academy already had film with me for my junior year, and they were open to me being able to come there. But eating that big slice of humble pie from an athletic perspective in Louisiana and just having to work my butt off to get onto the field, even though I was a much better athlete than I was the previous season in Colorado, really taught me humility, and that you're going to walk into some situations where no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be the best. And this really helped me when I matriculated to West Point, again, because there's some really smart individuals that get into the academy. And had I thought that I was going to be the number one athlete, the number one academic, then I would have really beat myself down, unfortunately. But fortunately, I was able to come in there and know it's okay not to be the best. You just got to keep yourself in the game.
Again, another important lesson, as I see it, the balance between having true humility, which is accepting our strengths exactly as they are, but
Mm-hmm.
also our shortcomings exactly as they are, and still being able to put forth the confidence and the effort that it takes to really perform and excel in that environment. How did that balance work for you?
The way that balance worked for me is I really looked at the task at hand and I asked myself, Omar, what are you trying to accomplish here? Making it very clear what I was trying to do. So, for example, at the academy, I knew that I was not going to be at the top of the class with a 4.0, right? But I said, what can I do? What's feasible for me to do? So, what's feasible for me to do was to get my grade point average up to a 3.0. And then once I got it up to a 3.0, I'd be able to wear a silver star, which meant I had a 3.0 academically. And then I can work myself up to a wreath, which meant I had a 3.0 academically, physically, and militarily. That was going to enable me to be able to partner with some of the folks that were Rhodes Scholars, etc., at the academy, because they wouldn't view me as a weak link. They would just view me as somebody that like was not on their level, but they could have a conversation with around the work. And it really made my academic journey a bit more relaxing towards the latter half of my academic career, being able to do projects and learn from Rhodes Scholars who had sometimes they knew more than the actual professors.
Yeah. Uh, so in that environment, explain what type of behavior on your part, or in general, what type of behavior was most rewarded in those environments? Was it easy to mistake reinforcement for alignment? I mean, reinforcing your strength and your assets for just lining up and being one of the guys?
Well, even when you're one of the guys, right? There's certain things you do well. So, for example, on the high school football team, I was one of the better blocking running backs on the team, right? And I was also somebody that could call out the plays to the quarterback in terms of what the defense was running, right? So my strength is that I could block and that I was intelligent enough to know what the defenses were doing. Fast forward that to the academy and being in this group work where you had anywhere from a Rhodes Scholar to somebody getting a C, and then in the middle you had folks like me really trying to be able to dumb down, and I throw up an air quote, dumb down what the Rhodes Scholar person was thinking down to the bottom person of our team, and then really take the person on the bottom of our team's thoughts and really take it to a higher level for that strategic Rhodes Scholar person. So playing the man in the middle, that was my role academically at the academy at some point, and that became what I was able to do well. And I think it really, at an early stage of my life, gave me an opportunity to be a consultant, a business partner, et cetera, right? Recognizing that while I'm not the smartest person in this room, I am the person that can help carry the discussion to make us better as a team.
I love that point because to me, being able to communicate and to take whatever the topic is and make it relatable to the smartest person in the room and the person that might need a little bit more time to catch
Mhm.
up is a strength that every leader would benefit from.
Right.
So being smart is great, but if you can't relate to other people, or if you just strive really hard and you can't communicate upwardly, what you brought is, to me, a key in leadership. And it's good to hear you, Omar, say that helped you throughout your entire career and life to this point.
Right.
Um, Back to kind of your football career, your high school, the differences in high school, the 5 different high schools, getting into West Point eventually with all the different levels of intelligence and experience and monetary background, all of that kind of stuff. What is there a difference between being prepared and being permanently on guard? Like, you know what I mean? Like you might get found out as not the smartest or the best running back or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, right? And
Yeah.
so you think, why am I in this room? Who the hell let me into this place, right? That's the that's the thing that you think, you know, when you get into West Point, I don't care who you are. It's like, man, how did I get into this institution that people are actually coming to watch us go eat lunch? For example, like it's a tourist destination. And so when I first got there, it was definitely like, oh man, like this is imposter syndrome. But it wasn't the first time I had ever felt that, especially, as I was moving schools and I get to a school, they don't know much about me. So then they got to take pieces of me and form an opinion about me, right? So as I continue to be junior and senior, they look at my grades and say, oh, this must be a really good kid. He's got really good grades, not knowing anything else about him. So we should give him a chance to play on the team, right? And so you see guys that might be bigger, faster, stronger than you that are playing behind you, and you start questioning, should you be there? And you have to tell yourself, yeah, of course I should be here because I may not be the top athlete on the team, but I'm making plays. I'm making us better. And so I have to stick to what I know, play my position, play my role, and not worry about the other stuff. And it's tough when you're young and you're doing that. It gives you a lot of stress, anxiety, etc.
Not only, not only are you being judged, assessed, whatever the right
Hmm.
word is, as you move from school to school and from situation to situation, you're in a situation that you have to do the exact same thing. You have to make an assessment of who are the people you want to hang around with, who are,
Right.
in air quotes, the winners. How do you advance? How do you stay true to yourself? So that's another challenge, while at the same time it's being done to you, not just by teachers and the leadership of the institution, but by your peers.
Yeah. And I will tell you, Bill, that what I used to do, and I talk about it in my book, West Point to Wall Street, my journal of mental wellness. I would actually, when I started bouncing from school to school, and my GPA was always pretty high, I wouldn't lead with that when I came to a school. As a matter of fact, I would often hide
Mm.
what my grades were, especially like my junior and senior year in Louisiana. I really hid that I was like one of the top five kids in the class. And so, we would get this homework, and my buddy's like, oh man, this is some really hard homework. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I say, man, this is really hard homework. Me neither. But the thing was, I wasn't even in their class. I was taking college courses.
Yeah.
And so I'm just agreeing with them at the lunch table, just trying to get along, but then said, hey, maybe if you and I study together, I can help you out a bit with some of that, right? But not letting them know that I already knew the material and had done
Yeah.
it like 2 years ago in Colorado, because that's a very strong school system out there.
Another key element of leadership is how you are able to get people to uh, follow you, to trust you, to be open to you helping to guide them without them thinking that you're talking down to them.
Right.
So your entire life was built on what I assume to be a long-term and high level of alertness, always being alert. How does that relate to you, and does it have an impact on you physically? How does that impact your life if you're always on alert?
Well, you see I'm not 50 yet, and you see the white beard, right? So, so I mean, that's part of it. But Bill, until as I've gone through my mental health journey, which really started a couple years ago, I would always be on high alert and guarded that somebody's gonna try to out me or put me in an awkward position. So I always had anxiety at work that somebody was out to get me, especially as I entered into my civilian career, because that the civilian side of the house was very unknown to me until I went to business school and entered it. And Columbia Business School was very competitive in terms of people always talking about where they wanted to work at, what they wanted to do, et cetera. And it was also quite liberal, and I'm more of a middle of the line person. And so it was really hard for me to adjust to that. And then once I got onto Wall Street, I found it very interesting that people had a political view one way, but then they were all about making money on the other side. And so I'm like, man, I don't even know how I fit in here or if these people even like me. And so I was always thinking, man, like, let me just come to work, do my job, do a great job, and see what happens. But also, what that did to me, Bill, because I never was trying to get attached to folks from a leadership level, is that if somebody came and offered me 15-20% more at a different shop, I was likely to go leave because I wasn't loyal, to the team that I was necessarily part of.
That raises another question. So, how do you know that you're really functioning well when you're not really settled? And it sounds to me like you're saying at times in your career you weren't really settled because you weren't connected to the company.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will tell you, I knew I was functioning well when the bonuses came out for those years, and I would get like a top level bonus, right? You know, it's funny, you have like these peer reviews and leadership reviews like every quarter or every mid year. And a lot of places in corporate America, there's a lot of managers, not a lot of leaders, right? And
Mm.
so the conversations would be very unstructured. You didn't know where you really stood at. And then they would get into a money conversation, or are you looking for a promotion conversation? But never, how can I help you get to where you want to go, right? And so what you learn to do very quickly, at least I learned to do, is I got to navigate my own career. It's on me. I can't depend on anybody else to lead me, because these are just managers that are trying to get me to push out a task so that they can continue to navigate their own careers.
Okay. In all of the environments that you talk about, Omar, we as a society praise resilience quite a
hmm
bit. When does resilience stop being helpful?
So resilience stops being helpful when you're not listening to yourself. You're not listening to your body or your mind. So for me, 20 years into Wall Street, and oh, by the way, having served in numerous combat zones and being a warfighter, coming back home with PTSD and not doing anything about it, and then having 18 hours of brain surgery that I could have died from, and being briefed on that. And so having some anxiety and stress prolonged that came with that. And then, you're entering to this environment. So you bounce back, you're working with that PTSD. You're working with that brain surgery and the effects that came after that. But now, going to work every day, I'm supporting my people that I'm leading, making sure that they're putting their best foot forward, making sure that they're recognized. But I'm not taking care of myself. And the way that thing rears its ugly head is that now my brain is being hijacked by PTSD, trauma, etc. And I'm thinking that my life is worth less than it is, and I'm thinking about taking my life, right? And so that's where resilience goes bad. It just continues to stack and stack and stack. And if you don't do anything about it, you don't treat the problem, you just treat the symptoms. Eventually, you could find yourself in a bad place, doing something that you would not necessarily do because the hijackers have taken over your brain. So that's resilience going wrong.
Okay. Let me take just a second, and I'm going to put this out there and add to it and correct me or embellish it as I go. But just for the listener's sake, so you're high school in Louisiana, you go to the military academy, West Point, you graduate there, you get
Mm-hmm.
into active duty, you're deployed to whatever war zones you're deployed to, you get retired from that, and you come back and you determine that you want to be a business person, if you will. You apply to a bunch of schools and get into Columbia University,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there you get some pretty key positions on Wall Street. In that condensed little scenario, it sounds like an ideal life. In reality, there were other pressures that were going on. Is my timeline of your
Yeah,
life correct?
your timeline's 100% correct. But one thing you got to add in there is I come back from the war zone. I'm still in the army. I'm thinking I want to be a general in the army. I have a brain tumor the size of a golf ball. So I have to have an 18-hour brain surgery. And then at the same time, I had family depending on me for money, etc. So I go through the brain surgery, and instead of sitting around recovering, I automatically start studying for the GMAT to get into Columbia Business School because I know that I'm going to need to make money when I recover. So I'm never even recovering from the brain surgery. I'm going straight to GMAT. I started business school when I still had the staples in my head from my brain surgery.
Well, that's what I wanted to get the overall timeline there because there's so much to fill in the blanks, and one of them obviously is that brain tumor. So what the brain tumor related to or not related to combat?
The brain tumor, we don't know what it was related to. We just know. But I will tell you that there's two other people from my unit that have brain tumors as well.
Ah,
So not
okay.
not sure. Um, but what I will tell you is the brain tumor added just another facet on top of what was going on from the Iraq, the war stuff and the PTSD stuff, because I stopped focusing on maybe getting treatment for that and focusing on being able to walk, run, etc. again after the having the brain surgery.
You, throughout your life, you've had a lot of responsibility and you've created a lot of pressure on yourself to
Hmm.
perform well. So you lived, I'm going to say, braced for a long time. When when it got to the point that and what I want to talk about is realizing suddenly that what you just said, where you're putting all your focus in areas that weren't necessarily best for you.
Right.
I think that's a fair way to say it. Uh, so, and again, a military term, what does it feel like when you've embraced for so long, and all of a sudden you realize that you have to stand down a bit?
Man, it feels good. It feels like you're letting your hair down, right? For me, it was letting, parts of my family know, like, hey, I'm here to help you out, but all of your problems can't be my problems,
Mm.
right? So, like, letting that be known. In fact, my mother, both my grandmothers, my grandmother's recently passed away at 100 years old. So if you can imagine, I'm making sure that they're getting their care and treatment, right? So even like them passing away was a lift for me, actually, and really trying to limit how much my mother is calling me, asking me to do stuff because most of the stuff she doesn't really need it to want. And so it's like, hey, I gotta, I'm trying to get through my day. So, um, and just being able to have that conversation with her, and I really want to give the credit to my weekly therapy sessions that I started with my therapist a few years ago. It's really opened me up to being able to tell people what I'm thinking and not acting like I always have to be the one to make things happen for other folks.
Always feeling like you had to be the one to make it happen for other folks. Again, that pressure being braced, everything we talked about, excuse me, Uh, what felt most unfamiliar to you when all of that pressure started to ease?
Time, like getting my time back, having time to actually relax and think about doing what it is that I want to do. So for example, I no longer work at a major bank, right? And so when you leave a job at a major bank, you're leaving behind guaranteed financial upside, right? You know that money's coming because you're at a bank. And the only reason people work at a bank is because they're trying to get paid. And so the bank knows that, right? You don't work at a bank for charity reasons. Even though they do have some charitable foundation stuff they're doing, but they're typically doing that because they want to be in that community in the future. So they want to be part of building that community. So leaving the bank, becoming becoming an entrepreneur, being able to get into teaching, work on my doctorate because I'm getting a doctorate in business and I'm in my dissertation phase right now. So being able to do the things that I want to do because I no longer need to bring in a certain amount of income for everybody else. Now, what I will tell you is, Bill, is that I solved everybody's problems over those 20 years. So there's really nothing for me to do at this point, right? My mom's house is paid for. Everything's paid for. So there's nothing else for me to really do at this point. It's been a relief. I guess it's like if you're a parent and you saved all this money to send your kids to college and then they both get athletic scholarships so you don't have to pay anything. And so you just have the money sitting there. That's kind of what it feels like, except I wasn't a parent. I was a son, a grandson.
You were a provider.
Right. Exactly.
So when you started to release control, is it harder to release control or is it harder to trust what's underneath that when you do release control?
For me, it's harder to release control because I'm always going to be checking in to make sure that there's a floor underneath, and I'm happy to step in and do the necessary, but I'm not happy to step in terms of my mother lives 3 hours away. If her hot water heater goes out, I used to drive 3 hours to go fix that thing. I won't do that and stuff like that anymore, right? Like I'll go hire somebody or tell her to be patient, until the proper maintenance person comes, right? And like I said, it's a relief on my time, on my sanity, et cetera. Have time for me.
I'm sorry, and it still addresses the issue.
It addresses the issue. Exactly. Everything's not an emergency.
That's a good way to look at it. So again, my guest today is Omar Ritter. He's the author of the book, West Point to Wall Street, My Journey to Mental Wellness. Let's talk a little bit about the book now. When you wrote that book, what were you trying to name or identify that hadn't really been clearly articulated for you before?
What I was trying to identify and articulate, Bill, is for the everyday person, right? So even though like I've been successful in my life and I've been in work at some fantastic organizations, I started off as just everyday person, and I don't have this awesome athletic ability. I'm not a musician. I'm not a famous actor. I'm just a guy who goes to work and has provided for his family and served this country. And so my book, what I'm trying to do is tell people we all try to live with this golden bull, tough exterior shell when we're trying to provide for our families and just get things done. But I want to have a conversation about what's underneath this, like what's going on in our gut and in our mind as we're trying to navigate the world. And why can't we make it a conversation like you and I are having right now of how are you doing? What makes you react that way? Do you need some help? What are those resources that I can help get you? Because what I want to do, because there's so much going on in this world with, people on the internet saying they have a bunch of money or they're successful at this, and people are trying to compete with folks that we don't even know if they have those things, if they have achieved those things. And it puts a lot of stress on normal everyday regular people. And I just wanted to make having a conversation about mental health more normal. And oh, by the way, Bill, most of these organizations that folks work for, they're paying insurance for health. They're paying health insurance, and so it's available to them for basically free to take that mental health break or to get that therapist on the phone. But everybody's too scared to raise their hand because they think, oh, my boss is going to find out. I'm going to be taking a knee like I'm weak. But what they don't realize is that by doing that, it gives you some clarity to your life. It actually makes you more effective, not only professionally, but also personally as well, to have those conversations that you never thought you needed to have and release some of that pressure.
Yeah, it takes us deeper into who we really are and what is really going to satisfy us and gets beyond what's the most normal question when you meet
Mhm.
someone new. It's like, what do you do? And we define people by what do you do? You probably ran into that quite a bit where people say, oh, you are a West Point graduate, you are this leader in the corporate world on Wall Street. But writing the book, actually writing the book, what did that, if anything, make more clear to you while writing it that living it didn't?
It made clear to me at this juncture in my life, I want to do a few things. One, I love working with small and medium sized business owners, helping them be successful using my financial skill set. Two, I want to be able to put this message out there to make mental health conversations a normal conversation and for people to seek out and get the help that they need. Three, I love influencing younger minds. And so not having to go to a corporate job every day and being there for 8 to 12 hours a day, sometimes on weekends, gave me the flexibility to teach and be a professor on site at UNC Charlotte, where I get to go and influence young minds every day, about finance, about mental health, right? So those are the three things that I'm going to be focused on the second half of my life. And so the book gave me clarity and the confidence to be able to do that, those three things, along with being able to have this conversation with you and others about my book, my struggles, and how I went on a journey to find my mental wellness.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you are so transparent and that you are so open because not only is it helping you, clearly your mission is to try to help other people.
Right.
And that's one thing that hopefully people can understand is that I believe all of us can benefit from taking a harder look at ourselves and checking our mental status. So if someone listening can kind of relate to some of the things you've talked about, what do you think? What would you say the first thing is most important for them to be noticing?
So, a couple things. So, number one, what I want your listeners to really hear is don't don't you dare think because like I went to combat or I had brain surgery that my problems are bigger than yours, right? Because I would never try to judge somebody and their pain by my pain. Like that's not fair to them. It's not fair to me, right? So like let's not judge each other's pain by our pain. And what I would tell them, Bill, is if you know that you're having anxiety, you can't get out of bed to go to work. There's certain family members that you can't deal with. You're having problems in your relationship that you can't figure out by yourself. It's okay. Like it's okay to go seek that professional help, with your spouse or that professional help you need for yourself in order to get better. Like this is a disease that a lot of us have, right? And it's in our DNA. And so we have to do the work in order to address the issues that we know. And like, let's stop suffering in silence. You
Mm.
know, that's my message. Like, please stop suffering in silence.
It is very surprising that we collectively, society, are quick to say, I've got something wrong with my stomach. I've got, I'm not moving well, whatever physical thing. But when it comes to mental health, there's this stigma. And what you're doing, Omar, and another reason I'm so happy to have you as a guest on the show is you're helping to uh, diminish some of that stigma. To let people know, even someone who's a West Point graduate, a combat veteran, a Wall Street all-star, and someone who's really helped his family can have some mental things that have to be addressed. So
Very true.
your entire life has been built on readiness. How does readiness shape how people show up in relationships?
The way for me that it shows up is you have to be, as human beings, especially type A human beings, we like to talk. We like to talk. We don't listen very well. And I find myself a lot of times not being able to listen very well. And since I've been in therapy, what has actually helped me do is listen, to my spouse, to my child, to folks that are listening to what they're saying and not always trying to come up, with the answer. Right. So I would say for me, that is definitely readiness, not trying to already always hop to a solution for somebody, but listening to them and aiding them in solving their own issues or problems, or listening to them so that I can solve problems that they may have with me, because I can jump to a conclusion and say, oh, she wants me to do this when I'm talking with my
Mhm.
wife, when it's actually not what she wanted me to do. And if I would have just listened, I'd be able to figure that out, right? So I'm trying to put um really disciplined approach to listening to what people have to say, because I don't need to come up with the solution for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, I found it very helpful to say, do you want me to help you solve this or do you want me to listen? Because they're
Right,
two separate things.
exactly.
Um, so as you move on and as you have life experience, and some of your, like you talked about being on the operating table as long as you were, that's got to give you a different perspective on life. Uh,
Does.
what changes when time starts to feel finite rather than expandable?
Yeah, I mean, at 20, 29 years old, I realized that death is a possibility, right? And so, you know, 6 months earlier, death was not a possibility for me. Like, I was invincible coming back from
Mm,
Iraq with a Bronze Star, a Valor Divide. I was a hero. Like, so death for me, like, that was definitely not coming anytime soon. I was going to be a general, etc. So after having that brain surgery, it's like, whoa, I got before the brain surgery occurred, I had to do a will. I had to sign documents, and I actually show in my book where I said, you have a possibility when the surgery is over to not wake up from the surgery, or to wake up from the surgery paralyzed. And so I realized with my health that I'm finite. And so anytime there's something wrong with me, I actually go to the doctor to get that thing looked at. Except I wasn't doing it for my mental health. And every day that I wake up, I feel blessed. And so I
mhm,
have a 3-year-old, and so I'm always calculating how long do I need to be around to get her to, 30 years old or 25
yeah,
years old. Like, what's the math on that, right? And my wife hates when I do that, but I'm a realist about time. And I tell my students in my accounting class, I'm like, listen, guys, there's one thing I want to let you know. The most important thing in life, the most valuable thing is time. There's nothing more valuable
mhm,
in time, not money, anything. These billionaires would pay you a big piece of their fortune if they could be 20 years old again, because they
mhm,
know if they can be 20 years old again with the knowledge they have, they can be 5 times their net worth. So they're not even worried about the money that they're going to give you to become,
mhm.
young again, right? So time is just so important and so valuable.
Great point. How do you recognize when you're genuinely okay as opposed to just managing well?
I recognize when I'm doing okay by being able to have a conversation like this. I'm able to hop out of bed in the morning with some energy, right? Because when I was suffering, getting out of bed was a struggle. And
Mm.
even when I left Wells Fargo, when I had just started my treatment, I was getting up at 10, 11 o'clock, close to the afternoon, just kind of moving at a snail's pace, thinking, oh, woe is me. What am I going to do without this job? But as I kept going to those counseling sessions and kept trying to figure out what is it that Omar wants to do, as I started finishing, my book, then I realized, man, you got a lot to be thankful for. You should have a lot of gratitude. You have a beautiful wife, you have a beautiful kid, you have a beautiful home. Like you've done what you needed to do from a work and set myself up for the rest of my life perspective. So just take a step back and like enjoy some of the fruits of your labor, but also it's not over for you in terms of being able to make money. You be an entrepreneur and just be really good at what you do. Doors will open. And so, for me, Bill, it's just been reshifting my focus, becoming re-energized. I get out of bed now at 6 o'clock in the morning, do a workout. And so I know it by the way I feel. I haven't had a suicidal thought in years. So that's how I know that I'm in a good place.
Well, through your entire experience, clearly you have redefined how you see success, and it strikes me that it's kind of reconciling peace with
Hmm.
ambition. What does success look like when you no longer have to stay on guard?
What it looks like is doing the things that make you happy, right? Doing the things that are going to allow you to support other people, like coming on your show, like going to University of North Carolina, Charlotte, teaching in the morning, like spending more time with my daughter. And when I do work with people, being honest and authentic and really getting to the meat of the conversation as opposed to all the fluff that goes around it, right? I don't do meetings for 8 hours a day anymore. I do meetings probably two to three 30-minute meetings a day, if that. But generally, I'm doing the work
Mm.
that is necessary for my clients, and they appreciate that because you can't be a fractional CFO if you're on the phone all day. Like somebody has to do the work, and so it's allowed me to do the work that's necessary, whether that's work for my entrepreneurial job or work to continue to build a relationship with my child and wife and family, right? So I'm able to just let me get to the center of what I need to do and do that.
Amazing. Uh, so, in your experience, what do people pass on through how they handle pressure and uncertainty?
What they pass on is, attitudes and sadness to those that are around them, right? Like if I'm not feeling good and I'm sitting at home all day and the closest person to me is my wife, then now I'm picking on her all day. Or now I'm picking on my child, right? So that's not fair because I refuse to go get myself treated. The people around me are gonna suffer. Even the people that work for me are gonna suffer if I'm in a bad mood. I'm gonna be short with them, not want to speak to them, not answer their questions, and other things, right? And so what folks need to realize is the longer that you stay away from attacking your issues, the closer you get to that hijacking, but also the more miserable you make those around you as well, right? And so folks will start pushing away from you. I mean, how often do we hear, man, I wish I would have gave that person a call. I never saw the suicide thing coming. And likely you hadn't gotten that call because you push folks away from you, right? And so they weren't trying to be in communication with you, and they wish they would have. And that's why I'm trying to say, listen, if you know somebody that's suffering, reach out to them and don't be one of those folks saying, I wish I would have.
Well, it's great to hear that. It also probably gives an answer to what was going to be my next question before I ask the question. But Omar, people listening to this, if they take one thing from this conversation, what would you want it to be?
I would want it to be that mental health issues are not your fault. It's a part of the situation or the cards that have been dealt to you. And what happens is your brain, again, is like a cockpit. And that mental health disorder is like a hijacker that gets into your cockpit and tries to do to you what the hijackers did in 9/11, right? Take your plane and crash it into something with you in it. And so once you realize that, it makes it that much easier to go get the help you need, get those bodyguards, those policemen, whoever, onto your plane to protect that cockpit from those terrorists that are trying to take you down and make you do bad things.
That's a powerful analogy. It certainly is. Again, I think you are doing a very amazing job of answering questions before they're asked. So this will just build on I believe what you've just shared with us, Omar, and that is to finish. I'm going to ask you the same question every guest on the show gets asked, and answer it to whatever degree and whatever direction you want to. And that's, Omar, what's the point?
Yeah, the point is to look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, am I okay? Am I actually getting through my days, weeks, months okay? And if your answer is no, then I ask you, please go and get the help that you need and the help that you deserve. Here's the thing, Bill. In my book, I show that there's numerous hotlines that people can call for free. There's numerous, at these jobs, there's numerous places that you can get help. And that's great. We can put 1,000 phone lines out there, 1,000 501(c)(3)s, 1,000 Bills, 1,000 Omars. It does not matter if the person is actually going through it, doesn't raise their hand and say, I need to go get that treatment. So that's the point of why I was happy to have this discussion with you.
Omar Ritter, author of West Point to Wall Street, My Journey to Mental Wellness. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really think it's going to be useful to those people listening who are trying to understand the pressure they live with, and to help them look to understand it rather than just try to push through it, because pushing through it isn't going to solve it.
Nope.
And I appreciate very much you saying, both here and pointing out in your book, that there's all sorts of resources that we can find, and that there's nothing wrong with that. So listeners, I hope this helps you put some language around what you're going through, something you already recognize, and importantly, give you the push, the acknowledgement that it's okay to pursue trying to, again, solve those issues as opposed to ignore them and be the tough person.
That's
Omar,
right.
thank you so much for your time and your insight and your experience. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you too.
Thanks for listening to What's the Point. If this conversation meant something to you, we hope you'll follow the show and share it with someone who might also benefit from it. And if you know a guest with a story worth exploring, send me a message, bill@billellis.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.